It's your boy Young Love, I give him that time. Pancho leg stay the Panchi America, Banyi Dwal, Pancho leg stay the Panchi America, Banyi Dwal, Ban walk on the lake, Kankara water no watching, Koga level leg, gear, pow, very leg, Panda with Yay, Panchi America, Banya Dwal, Chingatonga Pandon, could you ever buy a check out, Papu Panda Jiro, what they be Dwal eventing. Stay the Panchi America, Banyi Dwal, Pancho leg stay the Panchi America, Banyi Dwal, Ban walk on the lake, Kankara water no watching, Koga level leg, gear, pow, very leg, Panda with Yay, Panchi America, Banya Dwal, Chingatonga Pandon, could you ever buy a check out, Papu Panda Jiro, what they be Dwal eventing.
Welcome to Lagos State Media Beyond Boundaries across the globe, wherever you're tuning in on YouTube, Clubhouse, and also on Facebook. And in the studio with us is General Pagan Amuom Okech, the chairperson of Real SPLM and the leading leader in Soma, and also in the new alliance of non-signatories South Sudan opposition groups. General Pagan will touch a lot of issues in regard to our country. And as we have seen for the recent few weeks, the situation in our country and the things that ought to be discussed by South Sudanese themselves. And General Pagan, as you know, you, our viewers, is one of the icons of our nations, who always give his perspective where it is needed. Up to this juncture, you are all welcome, and I beg you to share widely this interview so that your colleagues, wherever they are, will get to hear and will get the message from General Pagan Amuom. Gerald, you're highly welcome. And I give you a few minutes to give us your opening remarks before we move to our conversation of this day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it is my pleasure to be with you in Lagos State Media. And allow me to greet your listeners and to greet our people and congratulate all South Sudanese on the 9th and 11th anniversary on the last July 9th. Of our 11th anniversary of independence, even though the situation is very bad and is worse since independence and is getting worse, yet we are independent and we honor the memory of all our fallen heroes, those who gave their ultimate and gave their life for us to be free. And it is good to be with you to discuss the current situation in our country. South Sudan is going through a very difficult time. Our state has almost collapsed. It is a failed state. It is a state that is captured by a clique, and South Sudanese do not and have never benefited from our independent state. The state is incapable of protecting lives and property of our citizens. The state is not able to provide the basic services for our people, like education and health. The state is not able to build the infrastructure, and despite a lot of resources, and now the situation is even getting worse with a worsening economic crisis in the country. Life is getting very difficult in a time that the country is also facing a serious humanitarian situation. 6.8 million to 7 million people are in danger of starving this year. And as you know, there are a lot of problems all over the world. The international community that have been helping the people of South Sudan over the years are also engaged in dealing with other crises in different parts of the world. It is important that we find a way out. South Sudanese are capable of ending this national crisis if they all come together. And therefore, the importance of this discussion by all South Sudanese as equal stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gerald Pagan, for your remarks and for reminding South Sudanese that we are in our dark times, which all of us need our collective efforts and our collective thoughts together in order to liberate our country once and for all. Yeah, as you have mentioned, some of the things, General, citizens of the country are wondering the road in which or trajectory in which our country is taking now. After the agreement 2018, which gave us 5 vice president and 1 president, that is total to 6 in presidency, and bureaucratic leadership in place, which constituted of over 600 MPs in both houses, the lower house and the upper house. Citizens were hoping that maybe this government would deliver something. And on the same hand, on the other hand, the government was negotiating with your group, Soma, in Rome. These things gave citizens hope that maybe our country is moving in the right direction. Unfortunately, we are yet to see what happened with the Rome negotiation between your group and the government in Juba, rather. Citizens want to know from you today, can you brief us about the Rome negotiation with the Juba regime? Thank you, Gerald.
Thank you very much. This is a very important question. Of course, the Rome initiative by Sant'Egidio community came as a result that a number of South Sudanese opposition movements which established themselves or allied themselves and created SOMA, South Sudan Opposition Movements Alliance, rejected to sign the revitalized peace agreement. In their view, they felt that the revitalized peace agreement did not address the root causes of the problem, and it was an agreement that was flawed. And the fact that the Sudanese regime that was overthrown by the Sudanese people of former President Omar al-Bashir imposed that agreement on the South Sudanese parties, also with associated agreements between the incumbent government of South Sudan, or President Kiir, and the government of Sudan, in which the government of South Sudan committed themselves to give a lot of resources to Sudan, like paying something like $5 billion for the damage caused in Hijlich war, and paying also like $2.8 billion for what they call as arrears, and another $1.2 billion, and agreements also for inviting Sudan to come and secure the oil fields, particularly in Unity State, and to rehabilitate the oil in South Sudan, with the agreement by the government of South Sudan and President Kiir in particular, because it was him who actually met with the delegation of Sudan on the 5th of June 2018. The delegation of Sudan was composed of the Director General of National Security, Salah Ghosh, the Minister of Defense then, Awad ibn al-Auf, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Al-Jardiri, and the Minister of Petroleum, in which they gave the demands of Sudan to President Kiir, and unfortunately President Kiir conceded to these demands, and a memorandum was then signed on the 24th of June in Khartoum, during the days when the government of Sudan proposed a draft Khartoum Declaration on peace in South Sudan, and they wanted that to be signed by the parties, in which they talk of the role of Sudan in securing and rehabilitating the oil fields. That agreement basically has given the entire oil produced in Unity State to the Sudanese, literally free of charge. That was an agreement associated with the revitalized peace agreement, and the government of Sudan was very much in a hurry, not even allowing the parties to negotiate the agreement by themselves. They were in that hurry. They wanted to solve their own economic situation using resources of South Sudan. These associated agreements actually became the main objective for signing the revitalized peace agreement. We rejected it because that was not serving the national interest of South Sudan. Also, we were of the view that this agreement was not going to be implemented. In a way, it was a form of President Kiir buying the surrender of the opposition. Yet those who were in the opposition saw an opportunity in it. They signed it, and they wanted to go to Juba and implement it. We were of the view that this agreement was not going to be implemented. And we became the SOMA, and referred to as whole-out groups by some certain quarters in the international community, holding out, not refusing to sign that agreement. And that was when Sant'Egidio community came with the initiative to bring the reconstituted government of national unity, the transitional government of national unity in South Sudan, that was formed with a lot of delays on the basis of implementing the revitalized peace agreement. And we started the negotiations. We signed a number of declarations and resolutions and we signed, for example, the Rome Declaration, in which the two parties, the reconstituted transitional government of national unity and the and SOMA, South Sudan Opposition Movement Alliance, have agreed to discuss and negotiate and address the root causes of the conflict and the problem in South Sudan. We also signed the Rome Resolution, in which we committed ourselves to create a conducive environment for these negotiations. We committed ourselves in the Rome Resolution to respect the cessation of hostilities agreement that we signed in December 2017. Then, after that, the Rome process is split it into two tracks, with two groups of SOMA negotiating with the government in parallel processes. In the process, of course, it was the same agenda. Now, in the process, when we came to discuss a declaration of principle, we were able to agree and sign a declaration of principle in Naivasha. And the other SOMA, with the government, where they did negotiate a declaration of principle, but they had two outstanding issues that they have not yet resolved. And at that time, that was when the government decided to withdraw from the Rome process until early this year in March. The government returned to the talks, and many events, of course, were happening. The revitalized peace agreement was experiencing difficulties of implementation, and we are on the table to negotiate, but now the Rome process seems to be getting overtaken by the events. Number one, that we are approaching the end of the transitional period for the revitalized peace agreement, which has given the transitional government the legitimacy to govern the country. And as the parties of the revitalized peace agreement committed themselves to implement the agreement during the transition and to conduct or to implement all the protocols and prepare the country, institutions, building of the institutions of the country, and building of the permanent constitution, and then prepare the country for elections and hand over power to the people of South Sudan by the end of the transition, by holding elections 2 months before the end of the transition, in which the people of South Sudan would elect their government and return the country to permanent peace and stable, sustainable democracy. That was the commitment the parties have made to themselves and to the people of South Sudan, that they will give power back to the people by the end of the transition. The agreement has not been implemented, and now we are approaching a situation where we may have a constitutional vacuum and a situation of loss of legitimacy by the reconstituted transitional government of national unity. That is where we are.
Thank you so much, Gerald Pagan, for that well articulations and explanations of what happened to the Rome initiative. Basically, you have seen the Rome is not yielding fruits which people were intended it to be, and the time frame which was given by the revitalized peace agreement is approaching. That is why the Rome is silent. That's what you are saying?
No, what we are saying is that, first of all, a lot of time was lost when the government withdrew from the talks, and now the government is left with few months to lose its legitimacy. In the Rome process, yes, we have signed the Rome Declaration, we have signed the Rome resolutions, we have signed the Declaration of Principles, and we have actually not started to discuss the agenda, substantive agenda, based on the Declaration of Principles, which has provided the framework of the negotiations. And that is where we are. Now,
Thank you.
The government is going to lose its legitimacy. They have gone into other processes which you introduced, and that we will be discussing next. That is where we are.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gerald Pagan. We have seen recently, especially the last month, you formed new alliance called non-signatories, a South Sudan opposition group. And many citizens are wondering.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, go ahead.
And many citizens are wondering what happened with the Rome, or why did you manage or came up with another alliance or another compositions of opposition groups? We will be happy if you elaborate more in regard to non-signatories South Sudan opposition group. What gave it a formation and how did it arrive into being? Thank you, Gerald.
Thank you. What is happening is the following. In our country, the reconstituted transitional government of national unity formed on the basis of the revitalized peace agreement is left with very few months in terms of its time in office, its mandate, and its legitimacy. This government, reconstituted government of national unity, when it was formed, It was formed on the basis of the promise they have taken upon themselves that they will be running the country for 3 years and 8 months. And then they promised to give back the power to the people to elect their government. That is their promise. They failed to deliver that. First, the incumbent government, or the SPLM IG and its allies, who negotiated the revitalized peace agreement with the opposition, the SPLM in the opposition, SOA, and FDs, and other political parties, the SPLM in government, and President Kiir in particular, obstructed the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement. His team diverted the resources away from building peace in the country and from reforming and rebuilding the institutions of the state. They kept away the resources of the country from building and reconstituting our national security organs and structures, including the army, to be built into a professional South Sudanese defense forces to protect the country as a non-partisan institution, or the national security was to be built into a professional security agencies concerned with the pursuit of the national interest and not to suppress opposition of the SPLM and government and its allies, and building a professional police force and civil defense organization to maintain internal law and order in the country, protect the lives of people, of the citizens and their properties, and implement transitional justice, for justice to be served and punishment of those who have committed crimes against humanity, including the massacres that occurred in Juba, Bor, Akobo, Malakal, and other places, also in Equatoria and Western Bahr Ghazal, the areas that have been affected by war. Instead of doing that, the president and his team, those of Tutkau and others, actually diverted resources away and used some of these resources to obstruct the implementation of the agreement. I'll give you one example. For example, the government spent millions of dollars to hire lobbyists to block the implementation of Chapter 5. They spent millions of dollars to block the establishment of the hybrid court. Instead of spending that money to actually help in the establishment of the court and carrying out and building the capacity to achieve justice and for justice to be seen being done, and for the victims of all the violence that have been taking place in South Sudan to have relief and to then engage in the process of carrying out reconciliation and healing the nation for all the wounds that we have inflicted in ourselves. Instead of doing that, they actually obstructed it. And this has led to the agreement not being implemented. Take, for example, in the security sector reform, they agreed that within 8 months, they would contain the forces and reunite or unite the forces and create united units that will be the basis of the national army. And these are units from the parties loyal to the various parties of the revitalized peace agreement. Instead of doing that, the SPLM-IG actually started to target the SPLM-IO forces cantonment areas and assembly areas. And in the last report of JAMEC and Citizen, 52% of the cantonment areas and assembly areas where the SPLM-IO forces were to be assembled and sent to the training center have been occupied by the SPLM-IG forces. So you can see they were doing the opposite of building the forces or building the institutions of the state and implementing the agreement. And President Kiir told us very clearly that this agreement was not designed to be implemented. And this is actually true because that was his agreement. He was saying that according to his agreement with President Bashir, this agreement will not be implemented. What will be implemented are the secret agreements they had with the government of Sudan. That this was the designers, even the designers of this agreement, if it is given to them, they will not be able to implement it. This is, of course, not true. But what is true is the tacit agreement that he will sign it and he will not implement it. That has been the problem. Now, they extended the pre-transition period to implement the task of pre-transitional period. Even they have not completed the implementation of the task of pre-transitional activities of the first 8 months up to now. Like in the security, for example, the last report or the last statement by Citizen is that the majority of the soldiers in the training centers have deserted because they were starved. And the graduation has been delayed and delayed and delayed up to now. They may do a ceremonial graduation, but this is actually not a force that is competent and prepared to really protect the country. These are forces that at any time they can fall apart again, like what happened to the SPLA in 2013. because their loyalty is still to their main parties. And the graduation is being delayed because the SPLM-IG want to control the situation. They had agreed, for example, to demilitarize the capital and all other population centers. They have not implemented that. But even the statements from the government are even worse. You can see when our people who are suffering from the economic hardships because of high prices of commodities and the falling of the value of our national currency, the pound, the South Sudanese pound, and many other reasons, mismanagement of the economy. When they protested, look at what the government is saying. They are saying, threatening the people that in South Sudan there is no water cannon or there is no rubber bullets. What they have are live bullets, basically to shoot to kill. And these are criminals. How can citizens protesting and demanding improvement of their life to be referred to as criminals? Where is the space for the citizens to protest? Remember what Dr. John told us, that if we, the SPLM, form a government and we are not able to provide services to the people not only have the right, but the people will throw us into the sea. And even if there is no sea near South Sudan, they will throw us into the Nile River and out of power. Because it is the right of the people. The government is there only to serve the people. It's not to lord over the people or to suppress them and oppress them. Our people struggle to be independent so that they are free and they are served by their own government in their own country, in which they can be proud to say that they have their dignity respected by their servants who are their government. That is the situation. So the agreement is not implemented. And the president said it cannot be implemented. It was not designed to be implemented. And therefore, we came together as the opposition parties. We said, look, the country is going through a very dangerous period. The government has failed to implement the peace agreement, revitalized agreement, has failed to bring peace to the country, has failed to develop the permanent constitution for the country, has failed to create a democratic environment for the people to freely discuss how we can build the country, for the political parties to be free in the country, and then has failed to hand back the power back to the people. This is going to be a constitutional crisis. And at the same time, failing to implement the agreement has led to widespread violence all over the country. This government has implemented policies that divided our people and made the communities to fight among themselves. Without the presence of that government, in the face of this deep national crisis, we said, even if we have differences, let us come together. We came together, and when we came together, we discussed the situation in the country, and realized that this situation needs the unity of all South Sudanese. It needs South Sudanese to seriously sit down and discuss. So we took the initiative and then decided to call on all South Sudanese in their different organizations and formations as stakeholders. So we said, let all South Sudanese stakeholders, let us sit down in a neutral place where we can be free to seriously discuss a way forward for our country and avoid this constitutional crisis that is approaching in few months. We had learned that the SPLM IG was cooking a plan to extend themselves in power, even behind the back of the other political parties. And they talked of a roadmap. So we said it will be dangerous and wrong if the government extend itself in power, to remain in power. It will be dangerous because the country is collapsing into chaos, into violence. The economy has plummeted, and the situation is getting very difficult for the people. We have more than half of our population in danger of starving and dying in the coming few months. We need to do something as all South Sudanese. So we said, let all the political parties in the government and the political parties in the opposition, the civil society organization, our religious leaders, our women leaders, our youth leaders, let them all come and sit in a round table and chart a way forward. Let them come and sit and build national consensus on how can we rescue our country, how can we protect and prevent our country from collapsing and disintegrating. That is what brought the non-signatory South Sudanese organizations to make that call to rescue the country. It is a call to all South Sudanese to go to a roundtable conference. And when we met and discussed, basically we said the country is in a difficult situation. Let us all as South Sudanese forget about our differences, forget about our disagreements. As all South Sudanese, let us come together. Let us rescue our country. That was the call, and that is what brought us together. And the non-signatories are a group of the political parties in the opposition. They are non-signatories to the revitalized peace agreement. We are saying we were negotiating in Rome with the government formed by the parties to the conflict. So we are now saying, now this government is losing its legitimacy. We are negotiating in Rome. We have not reached anywhere. The revitalized peace agreement has not taken the country anywhere. It is not designed to be implemented, and it cannot be implemented. So you don't need to extend the government. We said maybe it is time, if we go to the roundtable conference, that we may actually agree to, as political parties, we are now in the opposition opposed to the government, formed by the parties that signed the agreement. But if we go and think about the future of our country and the bad situation we are in today, we may agree that instead of struggling over power, let us all agree to step aside and out of this transitional government. Let us agree to form a government by South Sudanese experts and professionals in all the fields, and they will have a program that will reconstitute and rebuild the institutions of our state so that we can have strong institutions. They will implement a program of return and resettlement of our refugees from outside the country and our displaced people inside the country so that they go back home, resettle in their home areas, and are assisted and supported to rehabilitate and rebuild their lives. They will implement programs of overseeing the constitution-making process so that we can have a good democratic constitution that entrenches power in the hands of our people to elect their government periodically, where the political parties will submit themselves during these elections and create the ground for free and fair elections, while the political parties support this government of technocrats in this period that may be agreed how long it will take to implement these programs, at least the basics of them, and then rebuild the institutions of management of our national resources, public resources, because we have a lot of corruption and resources are wasted and are lost to corrupt practices. If we have transparent system of public management of resources built by these professionals, then when the politicians come to power and are elected, there will be a better system of transparent management of resources based on budgets. And if there is any corruption that is done, we will have also a legal system that will hold accountable any leader who misuse their office and get corrupt and misuse the public resources. And that is the rationale. But it requires, of course, an agreement, and it will help South Sudan from these failed transitional governments that we have been having all along. But these are issues to be discussed by the stakeholders. That will give us a better way forward and a good agreement that brings all the political parties together, including agreeing on the political system in the country to be free, to be peaceful, and that power will be exercised to implement programs that you promise and deliver on your promise. Whether you deliver or not, you hand back the power at the end of your mandate period, and then we go for fresh elections, and then take the country on the path of peaceful development and on the path of building a strong state and a strong, united nation, living in peace and harmony among ourselves as all South Sudanese, instead of using our independence to destroy ourselves and displace ourselves or engage in raiding ourselves, that is very destructive. We need a new dispensation. So that is how we came together. Of course, some people quickly went and said, oh, this is a military alliance to oppose the government. No, this is not a military alliance to oppose the government. This is an alliance calling for national consensus building, calling for dialogue, calling for South Sudanese, all stakeholders, to sit down and chart a better way for the country. This is even not a political alliance, because this is South Sudanese coming together, those who are in politics, those who are holding arms, those who are in the government, those who are in civil society, our religious leaders, our women leaders, our youth leaders. Let us all come and sit together. This is not even against the government. This is a call to the party in the government that please let us sit. Let us talk about the future of our country. Let us rescue the country from collapsing and disintegrating. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gerald Pagan, for your answering the questions of non-signatories, South Sudan opposition groups, and the genesis, and how does it come to being. Actually, you have mentioned the reason why you came together as opposition groups is to make sure you are worried about the vacuum at the end of transitional period. So your main focus is to bring South Sudanese together to sit on the table and discuss the fate of South Sudan after 22nd of February 2023. But General, as you are negotiating with the government in Rome, what can you say now? You came up with another group. Will it not contradict at the Rome negotiation if government decide today to call you back to Rome and sit down, discuss whatever things that you ought to discuss, and tells you, can we go to Juba so that we can talk inside the house? What can you say? Will it not contradict the non-signatories, and will non-signatories not contradict the Rome negotiation? Thank you.
No, it will not contradict. What is happening is the following. The failure of the transitional government of national unity to implement the revitalized peace agreement has created a new situation in the country, has created actually a major constitutional crisis in the country. And that is, one, this very government negotiating with us is losing its legitimacy, is dishonoring its most important commitment to give back the power to the people to elect their government in December. Few months, they will fail to deliver on number one commitment, that we will exercise legitimacy and the sovereignty of the country and the mandate to govern the country, and hand this power back to the people to elect their government. Now, having failed to do that, they are going to lose legitimacy. And then they will not be legitimate any longer. They have failed also in delivering peace to the people of South Sudan. Instead of having peace, we have now more wars all over the country, and some experts of United Nations and others call it subnational conflicts or subnational violence. They are not at the national level, but they are at subnational level. This is a disintegration of the country. So they have taken us to the edge of the cliff. The country could fall into crisis, and you can see from the latest development in Unity State or in Juba and elsewhere, you can see how we are approaching a very dangerous cycle of this crisis. And therefore, before us now, it is actually not a negotiation between the holdout groups and the reconstituted transitional government of national unity. This is really not the issue. It is not about negotiating peace in Sant'Egidio initiative, because this government has actually failed to deliver peace itself. And we are not talking about discussing as political parties to form a larger government, because that large government, as you in your introduction, you started with having a presidency of 6 and having a parliament of 650 and having a very large cabinet, all is spending resources and not delivering anything to the people. Nothing that they are delivering. They are not delivering peace. They are not delivering development. They are not delivering humanitarian assistance to the people. Rather, they are destroying the country, looting the resources. This idea of continuing to negotiate while the country is collapsing is dangerous. And therefore, we came to say, look, we have a new situation, a very dangerous situation. The country is disintegrating, the country is collapsing, and the government is losing its legitimacy. Let us all come down and sit. Not only the political parties, but let all the stakeholders in South Sudan come and sit. Let the youth who are being killed and arrested now in Juba because they don't have jobs, because life is very expensive for all the citizens, let them come to the table and discuss with us how do they want us to build this country for them, because this is their country. They are the future of this country. How can we achieve peace in this country? The youth are also the one dying in the wars that are taking place all over the place now. So we have a national emergency that we must all mobilize ourselves to confront it. So it is not in a contradiction. Actually, even Sant'Egidio initiative can be useful because their purpose is to achieve peace, reconciliation among South Sudanese. If this is the noble goal, then the goal we are saying, let us just stop anything that we are doing. Let us rescue the country. And let the political parties also agree to stop this failure, because all the government, the transitional government formed by the political parties, have all failed to deliver on their mandate, to deliver on their programs, to deliver on their promises. They are struggling among themselves and even using the government to fight among themselves. You have seen it with this government, even right at the top.
Thank you, Gerald, for that. You mentioned a very critical point that we are at the vacuum or constitutional crisis, rather, of which you refer to. If we don't come together, then we will find ourselves at the dark end. That is why you are appealing for the all citizen to join the non-signatories and other groups in order to persuade the government, regional bodies, international communities to accept, sit down and discuss the fate of our country. As you were giving us the objectives of non-signatories, South Sudan opposition groups, you mentioned technocrat government. And this government will be led basically by the experts to set up the system, clean up the system, and set up the institutions for a certain period of time. Thereafter, politicians will be given a free time to campaign, and then elections will take place. Are you telling us that you yourself, the like of Gerald Malong, Thomas Chirillo, and other opposition groups outside South Sudan, including your colleagues in Juba, headed by President Salva Kiir and his 5 vice presidents, and other generals who are holding some of the key positions in our government, are you telling us that you are willing to go home and hand over the nation to experts for a certain period of time? If that's what non-signatories are advocating for, or what are you meaning actually? Thank you, Gerald.
Yes. What we are saying, exactly as you said, we are saying that let all South Sudanese stakeholders come and meet to discuss in a round table. The idea of a round table that we are all equal. We are all equal South Sudanese citizens. Every one of us, whether you are a woman or a man, an elderly or a young person, we are citizens. And every one of us as a citizen has one vote and has one share in South Sudan, has the same duties towards South Sudan and towards the citizens of South Sudan, and has the same rights as a citizen of South Sudan. Nobody is better than the other. We all care about South Sudan. We are interested to build South Sudan as a peaceful, just, free, and prosperous country for all South Sudanese without any discrimination. That is where we are proceeding from. And based on that, in a situation of crisis, national crisis like this, let us sit in a circle, or our representative, but all of us, wherever we are also, and our representative of all stakeholders from our spiritual leaders who keep exhorting us and giving us sermons that we have failed and we have to build a just system and we have to bring peace for the children of God, for the citizens of this country. They have to be there to give us guidance and to also share and make their contribution. What type of South Sudan we want to have. All our young people who are actually the most vested people, citizens, because they are, this country and its future is being built for them, and they will be the one building it for their own children also as well. Therefore, they are the most important constituency that we have to also carry their views and for them to come and be part of the design or redesign of this new nation and what form of a state we have. Women, they are the majority of South Sudanese. And in the situation that we are having now, the violence against women is making South Sudan the worst place for a woman to be in. The economic hardships that the country is facing is a worst place for a woman as a mother or as a daughter to be in. They have a right to be in this round table. The civil society organization, the media, they have also a right to be in this table as we discuss a better dispensation, a new dispensation for our country. The political parties who have formed themselves to provide leadership, if they are elected in any various elected positions in the government to provide leadership, they are also interested party to have a system in which they can offer their ideas and services to the people and promises to be elected, a system that is also fair for all South Sudanese, including their political leaders or aspirants who want to serve the people. So all of us, we are saying, let us come and sit down and discuss. And what does it mean? When you say we form, maybe it is better to form a government of technocrats. The rationale behind this is that part of how this crisis is manifesting itself is arising from the political parties, especially the SPLM. In 2011, the SPLM and other political parties who formed the transitional government after independence had a failed government. And this failure and the discussion on how to correct these failures led to disagreement within the SPLM itself. The president on one side came out to accuse his colleagues in the SPLM who were in the government that they were corrupt. The leaders of SPLM who conducted a press conference in the SPLM house on the 6th of December also accused the president of being corrupt and of trying to build private militia and wanting to take the country to war. And they were saying, let us democratize the SPLM, let it be a democratic organization capable to govern in a situation of peace. They disagreed. We disagreed. I was one of them. We disagreed. President Kiir was the chairman of SPLM. I was the Secretary General of SPLM. And his deputies split into two. Dr. Riak was with us. James Waniga was with him. Anyway, that government literally collapsed and took the country to war. So that government has failed. Why did it fail? It failed because of internal power struggle and internal disagreements. That's one. They themselves, President Kiir and James Wani, formed a government when we were taken into prison. And Riek Machar left Juba and formed the SPLM-IO, became an armed resistance. And later on, we became former political detainees as SPLM leaders. That government they formed, led by President Kiir with James Wani as vice president, it failed. You remember they formed something called crisis committee, and there was a lot of corruption that even South Sudan did not see before. And they had total failure. They went and negotiated peace, and we went and met and had the 2015 peace agreement. President Kiir had doubts and did not want to sign. He signed later with reservations. And he started to delay the implementation. We disagreed again. The government that was formed after a long delay in 2016 failed again because of internal contradictions within the parties. And the country was taken back to war by that government. That's the third government. That government collapsed. Riek was chased out and into Congo for 40 days. Then President Kiir formed another government. This is the fourth government now, with Taban Dengai as first vice president. Then that government, everybody in the world said, oh, now that Riek is out now with Taban, they can now implement peace with President Kiir. The problem was the relationship between Kiir and Riek were not good. And that was a problem. That government failed to implement the peace agreement. And war continued. Then after it failed, they did an extension, and members of parliament were given $40,000 to do the extension and all that. We followed that. That government failed, and a new government was formed when the revitalized peace agreement was imposed by President Bashir for him to access oil and money from South Sudan to solve his own problem. He went and also he lost his power there. That was another problem. This government now formed, it has failed to implement the peace agreement. It has failed to bring peace, permanent peace to the country. It has failed to bring stability. It has failed to create a democratic system with good governance. So you can see all these governments since independence were all transitional governments. And all of them have failed, mostly because of internal disagreements and power struggle within the government itself. And this is the same thing that we have up to today. Now we are saying you cannot keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. Let us change doing things, change the tools that we have. This tool is a transitional government. It's not taking us anywhere. It's not taking us to peace. It's not taking us to democracy. It's not taking us to economic development. It's not taking us out of corruption. It's not taking us out of violence. But actually, violence is increasing every time. To solve this problem, we suggested a government of technocrats. Because first, they are not politicians. They are experts in their fields. And they can design systems in their fields that can work well. And we have so many of them all over the world and inside South Sudan. Actually, in South Sudan, many of them are either having their own NGOs or think tank groups developing policies, providing relief, engaging in development activities, or outside the country, building other systems, other states. Like, for example, we have so many South Sudanese medical doctors and experts in public health building the Botswana state as we speak. So many South Sudanese medical doctors are practicing medicine in Kenya, in South Africa. And imagine, these are relatively well-developed countries if you compare them with South Sudan. We have so many South Sudanese professors and academicians teaching all over the world. All over the world. Can we ask them to come and help us design our educational system, help us design the Ministry of Education, how to manage the educational system, help us design our health system and develop the health policy, and design a ministry that is capable to manage the health system in the country. And we have experts in agriculture, in animal husbandry. Can we ask them to do that? And experts in all the fields. In all the fields, in administration and all the fields. We believe the failure of the political class in South Sudan And the failure is in this form of transitional government that is formed by politicians not elected by the people, not giving their promises to the people. Elect me for 4 years or 5 years, and in this period I will do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At the end of the 4 years or 5 years, whether you have done very well and deliver on your promise, or done very bad and you fail to deliver on your promise, you must hand over power to the people. You cannot say, no, we have a situation, I am extending my time in power because you feel that you may not be elected by the people again. Mandate is time bound. You deliver, you do not deliver, give it back to the people. Now, when you have a situation where you have transitional government is staying in power and extending itself in power and failing to deliver, they cannot be held accountable by the people, and every time they will just keep extending their time. They are afraid to go for elections because they have not delivered, or because they will be held accountable for one reason or another. This is the rationale why we are proposing a government of technocrats. But what does it mean? It means, yes, the politicians, the political leaders in the government, the political leaders in the opposition must agree for the following. Number one, to stay out of the transitional government. Stay out of transitional government. We are actually now saying, as non-signatories, we are saying we are ready to stop fighting the regime, whether peacefully or militarily, and let us all come and sit and agree to a new dispensation. We are ready to talk to the political parties in the government, not to join them in the government. No. The Rome, if we were to sign a peace agreement in the Rome process, jobs will be created for us and position will be created for us, and then we will have a much more larger government. We are saying this type of transitional government have failed. So let us all, those in the government and those who are outside the government in the opposition, let them agree to step aside. Let them agree that they will not ever again be part of the government if they are not elected by the people. Let them agree that not ever again in South Sudan they will use arms to take power, because now we are independent. And we should not have coups, and are we okay?
Yeah, we are okay. You got lost. I think there was
okay. Somebody called me. That was
all right.
But I stopped it. So we have to agree that no more violence in our political system. We have to agree that power, when you are elected and you form the government, you are elected by the people and you form the government, you have to exercise your mandate within the time limitation provided by the Constitution. At the end of the election, you hand it over to the people, you prepare the elections, and if you are contesting again, you go and contest. If you win, you then have your second mandate. If that was your end term, then prepare elections, hand over power peacefully to the next elect president or prime minister, depending on the system that will be chosen by the people. This is to get out of making permanent the transitional governments. As Dr. Majak, in some of our discussions, Dr. Majak Angot, in one of our discussions, that one of the manifestation of the crisis in South Sudan is the permanency of transitional arrangement. They become permanent. They are now permanent. For the last 11 years, all governments that we had are transitions. Our people did not get a chance to be elected. And if the political leaders, the political parties, do not agree to step aside, we will not have peace in the country. There will always, war will continue. Our elections will be not free and fair. The result of elections will be contested, and that will lead the losing party will take up arms to fight. And that will lead to formation of a transitional government. That is a trap that South Sudan will not come out of it. And this is the way we think we can save ourselves. Of course, people will ask, what is it that will make President Kiir accept to step down with Dr. Riek? What will make them step down is this need for a political agreement before exercising power among the political parties and with all the South Sudanese stakeholders. First, if he insists to remain in power and not give it to technocrats, he will continue to fail. And as he continues to fail, he cannot again use the same old story that he did not find people who can do work. He found people who can only eat. And this is every time and every time. People will come to realization, say, Mr. President, you are the one not being able to work. You are only eating and you have been eating. That will be his legacy, and it will not end well for him. So this is going to help him. Two, as our first president of independent South Sudan, appointed by the parliament to assume the presidency and prepare the country for elections in 2015, and then was pushed to 2018, and then to 2022, and now to 2025, every time pushing it, he is the top leader. And this failure will be on his neck, because he cannot say the first government, it was his ministers or his secretary general who failed. What about his second government? What about his third government? What about his fourth government? What about his fifth government? Whose problem is this? Who is appointing bad people? Who has failed to appoint the right people? That will be his problem. But now, if he accepts what we are proposing, and by the way, it is not our idea. It's not that we are proposing it for anybody to say because it is proposed by them, then it's not a good idea. No, no, no. This is for South Sudanese. Let them all sit. But if he accepts this, what will happen? Number one, he would have shown to all South Sudanese, he will show to all South Sudanese that he cares for this country, that he had to step down, but more than that, that he has actually contributed to help design a new dispensation and agreement that was implemented by technocrats, and a system that became successful with his support. That will be maybe the only best legacy he will have. Plus the legacy that he spent almost all his life before independence in a struggle. Regardless of whether we agree or disagree with him. But that will be his only positive best, that he could step down, that he could support a new successful transition. Even if he wants to contest, I'm sure he would be the most prepared person to contest the elections. I believe he may not need to do it because he has been leading South Sudan for the last 17 years. And that is enough. So the idea that the political parties cannot agree to rescue the country simply because they want to remain in power or they want to take power by force, and not to agree to give this power back to the people and create a system how the people can freely elect their government, that is not logical, especially in a situation where the country is collapsing and disintegrating. We are a laughing stock now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, General, for those words and more explanations in regard to the technocrat government, which most of you are supporting, and you are proposing for the best interest of South Sudan and South Sudanese in general. And sometimes others may ask, is it because you are not on the dinner table, that is why you are calling everybody not to eat? Or is it a genuine call? Because some of them may regard it, as you put it rightly, that why is you proposing this idea? Why not so and so, and why not them? They may accuse you that maybe because you are out of the government, that's why you are so much mindful about the situation of South Sudanese and forgetting that even when you were with them, you were trying to make sure South Sudanese enjoy a peaceful nation, as most of you, as our veteran, delivered to us on 9th of July 2011, which is a good thing, and everyone will remember you for that. If you have anything to add in regard to that interludes, then maybe 2 minutes before we move to the main issue that will actually, which inform your decision to arrive to that conclusion of technocrat government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, yes, that is a very good question. And it will be very clear to any observer that it is true that I'm not in the table where they are eating. It is true that being in the opposition, we are negotiating with the government. And if I am making this proposal to get a seat in the table where they are eating, I have better ways to get a seat, and maybe a seat closer to where that food is, than the proposal we are making. First of all, if I want to be part of that government today, I will be in Juba. I actually left a position and I'm being called to return to that position. Not only that, I'm being called to come to a better position in the table. But we are saying, let us stop this idea of having a seat in the table. Let those in the opposition not fight to find positions in the government now, or to take the government now. That is a possibility of struggling. I have been part of the struggle, and I know how to overthrow a government. I'm actually trained in that. That is my specialization. But today, we are in a serious national crisis threatening with South Sudan disintegrating and collapsing into chaos. We need today, now, to stop all what we are doing to come and sit and rescue the country. That is the idea. Now, for us, we are making this proposal that we should not have another transitional government extended or formed again by the parties. Let all the parties agree to stay out of it, because that form has failed and it will continue to fail. And they have no incentive to allow it to succeed. Because those who are in the government, when they go for elections, some will win, others will lose. So they have no interest to take the country for elections, just for them to continue to rule by agreement among themselves. And this is a proof that we are making this proposal in the best interest of the country. We are saying, let us stabilize the country, preferably through a government of technocrats or a hybrid form of a government with some politicians maybe in the parliament to provide oversight and legislate laws in the transition, but the executive exclusively should be held by professional technicians and experts to stabilize the country and build the system that will reboot South Sudan into peace. If our interest is to be part of the power, then we will be saying, no, don't extend the government. Let us form a new government that includes us. That will be clear that we want to be part of the mess. And those in the government, if they consider it as their table to eat, we are saying the country is collapsing. You better rescue the country because it will fall on you. There will be no table. They will be running out of the country, all of us. So let us rescue it. And you can come back through the mandate of the people, winning the elections. And actually they will be in a very advantageous position because they are now making money to go and bribe people or elect themselves into power. So that is even better for them. Of course, if they are not held accountable for whatever that they have taken, or I mean individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. You have just reminded me about an incident that took place when I was a small boy. We gathered, in the villages, when boys gathered to at least to fry up a meat. We gathered in a small rakuba, and one of the poles was not at the stake. And one of my colleagues said, "Can we just fix this one before we eat?" And then we ignored. So we went and ate, and immediately the rakuba followed us. We all ran.
So we are saying the rakuba is falling on them.
Yeah, rakuba is falling on them.
Before you continue eating.
Thank you so much. Yeah, actually, we are moving to the delicate topic that you mentioned before. Is the reason to why you came up with the non-signatories and pushing for non-technocrat government, at least to replace these continuous extensions and transitioning of the government in our country. We have had the roadmap and what the roadmap delivered to the people of South Sudan in Freedom Hall this month. And the roadmap was clearly giving our transitional government another 2 years extension period for them to implement the 70% or 73% of the agreement, which has not been implemented for the last 4 years in actual sense. And they're telling citizens, give us this remaining period up to 2025 on the 22nd of February, and everything will be done. And on that day of 22nd February 2025, you'll be having an elected government by the people of South Sudan. And we have had their commitment in that Freedom Hall through the speech of Dr. Yak that they are willing now to implement. And citizens are asking, where was that political will for the last 3 years or 4 years? What happened? And citizens too are asking, is there any magical things that will appear in your political arena to make sure the 2 years will be enough to implement 70% or more than 70% of the revitalized agreement 2018? As non-signatories, which you are the spokesperson of the group. What is your stand in regard to the extensions of transitional periods up to 2024, where they will carry out the election in the month of December, and then by 2025, the month of February, the full functioning government will be operating in the territory of South Sudan. And as you will be giving us and the citizens of South Sudan your position, you will get to know that the country is at a crossroad. There is hyperinflation in the market. Things are extremely expensive in the market, and oil is at the higher price now, considering the world economic depression, of which most of the economists are saying the economic cessation is about to hit the world within this year, being fueled up by the Eastern Europe crisis between Ukraine and Russia, which will possibly be backed up by China with US in regard to Taiwan. Kindly give us your perspective and your position, General. Thank you.
On the extension, the non-signatories, as I have said earlier, analyzed the situation, found out that the country is collapsing and disintegrating. We may not have South Sudan. Just imagine that idea, that we may not have a state in South Sudan. And life will be worse than it is now. And the country have reached here because of all the failed transitional governments of South Sudan. From the first one at independence down to the last one now. They have all failed to implement their programs. They failed to bring peace in South Sudan, deliberately obstructing the peace agreement and using the mechanism of extension or signing another peace agreement with another transitional period as a way to remain in power. To do what? To destroy the country. Therefore, we reject any extension again of the mandate of this government. This is one. Two, as we reject the extension of the transitional government, we also reject any other form of transitional government that is formed by the political parties or the parties to the conflict. Because that is in itself the problem. Thirdly, we say it is time to rescue South Sudan. Let all the stakeholders come together in a roundtable conference, deliberate on the fate of the country, develop a national consensus through that dialogue, agree on a new social contract, and proceed with the formation of government of technocrats to begin building a new state in South Sudan. Overhaul the current state, which is a state that is captured, a state that is in the hands of a kleptocratic elites, engaging in looting the resources of the country, whether it is oil, whether it is gold. This form of government cannot continue because it is what is creating the crisis itself. Just imagine the first act of the president after announcing extension is to remove the Minister of Finance and replace him with another Minister of Finance. Simply because this minister told the truth. The oil is sold up to 2027. And the oil money is not brought to the government. This part I'm the one adding. But exactly that is what it means. Because if the oil is sold to 2027 and the government does not have money, the question is, where is the money of the oil? When the oil prices are very high now. South Sudan should be the richest country in the region in terms of hard currency. And the hyperinflation and hiking of prices of commodities should have not happened in South Sudan. You see, all the oil producing countries now are actually making more money than any other time before. South Sudan is. So you can see the signs that the extension is coming to with more sale of oil, more sale and more stealing of gold, where the country will not benefit. If this was the first act of the president or of the government, extension will lead to the collapse of the country. If you are a South Sudanese listening to me now, I'm appealing to you that please, our country has collapsed already. It is disintegrating. It is disintegrating. We have to rescue it now by changing the course that we are on. And the first thing we do is to stop extending this government which has failed. They have already failed to implement the agreement. And they have failed to implement the agreement not because they lack time, but because they lack political will to implement, and because some or part of the parties in the government, particularly the SPLM-IG, is obstructing deliberately the implementation of the agreement to come into the country, for peace to come into the country, whether it is a security arrangement, whether it is justice and accountability, whether it is the building of transparent institutions of management of public resources and the economy, whether it is peace, law and order, whether it is political space in the country. All these are being obstructed deliberately by the SPLM in the government. And I want you, if you are listening and part of the SPLM in the government or supporting President Kiir, please do not take my words as being hostile against President Kiir or the SPLM-IG. No. I'm sharing with you the truth, and I'm sure if you are following the development in our country, that is the situation. I'm sharing this to make sure that the country is rescued and prevented from collapsing into chaos. And that is through dialogue. And this dialogue will involve the SPLM in government. It will also be time for them to consider what are they doing. Thank you.
Thank you, General. It's very unfortunate that what most of South Sudanese are seeing now is not clear, and it is upon the political class to decide and exactly use whatever length that they have to use to view the future of that country before the end of this transitional period. During that occasion, General, President Kiir, during his speech, deliberately called two of you to come to Juba to implement the agreement within this remaining 2 years of extension. And he mentioned you specifically, General Pagan Amuom, Okech, and General Thomas Chirillo. He said, I'm calling my brothers to come in so that we can work together to deliver peace to people of South Sudan. And on that note, you said it earlier that if you were willing to have or to be part of the dining table, you would be in a position to go to Juba and even to get better position than the position which you were having before. And that is true. Since you left your position as Secretary General of the SPLM, everyone that is coming after you now is still acting. And that sent a clear message that the leadership of SPLM of 1983 up to 2000, up to 2011 to 2012, all the way to 2013 before the disagreement within the party, that leadership still have much respect to you specifically, and that is why the position is still, and they still refer to you as the secretary of the SPLM as the party. What can you say to that call being directed specifically to you and Thomas Chirillo by the President of the Republic, Salva Kiir Mayardit? Thank you, Gerald.
Thank you for bringing this. And well, first of all, I thank President Kiir for inviting Commander Thomas Chirillo and myself to return to Juba to implement the peace agreement and deliver peace to the people of South Sudan in honor of our fallen heroes. President Kiir mentioned that we were comrades in the struggle, comrades in arms, and we were part of the liberation struggle together. And I appreciate the reference to that, because when we were in the SPLM, we were guided by the spirit of self-sacrifice, and we were ready to die to liberate this country. And indeed, many of our comrades have fallen for us to be free, and for South Sudan to be independent, and for our people to be free. They have fallen for our people to have a country in which there will be proud citizens, respected, and their dignity is restored. They've fallen so that South Sudan and South Sudanese can be prosperous, living in peace and harmony among themselves from different tribes and different genders and different age categories. These were the goals for which we struggled. And I would like to remind President Kiir, who was my former comrade in the struggle, that these were the reason for which we struggled. The way South Sudan is going now, even our fallen heroes will be ashamed of what is being done. The way the country is in is terrible. Now, let us be honest and candid here. President Kiir said that this agreement is designed not to be implemented. Even if it is given to those who design it to implement it, they will fail. Now, if that is the position of President Kiir, then why is he inviting us to return to Juba when this agreement is not going to be implemented? When he knows very well that even with the extension he has declared, the 24 months, he will not deliver peace, he will not deliver a stable South Sudan in which our people can elect their own government. And if really President Kiir wants to honor our fallen heroes, then my appeal to him is for all of us and him first, then our spiritual leaders, him and Dr. Riak and others in the government, then our religious leaders, then our women leaders and our youth leaders and our civil society leaders, and us in the opposition, let us all go and meet in a neutral place where we will all be free to deliberate deliberate and discuss in a roundtable conference in a neutral ground. And from there, armed with a national consensus, armed with a new social contract, armed with a new agreement to rebuild South Sudan, agreeing to discuss all the problems that we have, agreeing to have a government made up of professional South Sudanese to reboot our country and rebuild, or actually build a new system for South Sudan that will put it on the path of a state and nation building. We will then, all of us, go back home to begin the real building of South Sudan. That is when we will join hands. Commander Thomas will put his hand with Commander Salva Kiir Mayardit, the Commander-in-Chief, and put my hand with him together with all the others, whether those who were in the SPLM or in other political parties, because South Sudan belongs to all of us, to all South Sudanese, and will contribute to build that country. That is what will honor our fallen heroes. If we go to rescue our country and prevent this violence that is in it, that I believe is the best way. Joining the government will not add anything, especially when it is a failed government, when it is a government having a lot of conflicts internally. That will be a waste of his time, a waste of our time, and that is the most important thing we can do, is to rescue the country. And I would like to appeal to President Kiir, before it is too late, I appeal to you as the first president in South Sudan, as an independent country, to please join hands with all the other South Sudanese to rescue the country. It is collapsing, and that will be your first and only most important legacy. That in your time, you contributed to put the country back in the path of building a modern state that is capable to serve our people. Back in the path of building a nation out of our 64 tribes, living all united without tribalism, all united in peace and harmony among themselves, and creating wealth to build a prosperous life. That is my appeal to President Kiir through your channel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, General. It gives people a sad mood when you are reminding us about the fallen heroes, more than 2 million lives, which our nation had to take in order to give us freedom that we have today. It's sad indeed, and thank you for that. Actually, when after the declaration, we have seen last week what happened in Mayom. And the country is now being fragmented and fragile state, of which arms is available everywhere, in every corner of the country. Brother is killing brother across the nation. We have seen those horrible, traumatizing, and inhuman clips circulating on social media. And South Sudanese are wondering, is this really the stage that we have reached as the nation? As a spokesperson of non-signatories, and as one of the veterans who fought for that country for more than 20 years, and you have contributed significantly. What can you say about that? The Mayom incident and the ambush in Nimili Juba Highway that took lives of 7 innocent South Sudanese. Thank you, Gerald.
First of all, these events were very unfortunate, and I start by condemning the barbaric extrajudicial execution of those officers and men. That is a violation of law, South Sudanese law, and that is a violation of international covenants protecting the rights of prisoners of war, and that is a violation of even the tradition of South Sudanese. Even in traditionally, when we fight this type of and calling me, I don't know what is his problem. He's so persistent. So we condemn the extrajudicial killing and execution of these prisoners of war. If they were prisoners of war, they have rights, and their rights should have been respected. And the violence in Mayom, Unity State, and in Eastern Equatoria State or Central Equatoria State, or all over the country, in Upper Nile, in Jonglei, in Western Bahr Ghazal, in Warab State, in Tonj, the killing of more than 100 officers and servicemen, and also civilians. That's what we are talking about. The country is collapsing. The country is trapped in a vicious cycle. At the end of that vicious cycle, we enter into another cycle that is more vicious, more dangerous, with even more parties engaging in the conflict. And we need to break this trap. If you remember, in 2015, peace agreement, there were only 2 parties to the conflict in the war. Then FDs and the other political parties. When we signed that agreement and formed a government, transitional government, and it failed, it led to another war, which was even more vicious and covered almost the whole country. That dragged in Equatoria into it. And it failed. That government failed to implement it, and it has led to war again in a more wider and new actors entered. That was, for example, NAS emerged. That was when SSUF emerged, and many other groups. Then peace agreement was signed, and more parties joined the government, and we had to form a bloated government, transitional government of national unity, which again has failed. Now, as it is failing, and they are doing the extension, we are entering with the extension into a new cycle. New actors are emerging, like South Sudan People's Movement, led by General Stephen Boy. And others also are going to emerge. If we do not break this by going to the roundtable conference.
The like of Kiriguang faction too.
Yes.
Which has already been divided.
Oh, exactly. And even fighting among themselves. And now, if we do not go to a round table, if we do not accept a genuine dialogue among all South Sudanese stakeholders to develop a national consensus on how to rebuild our state and build our nation that will live in peace and harmony, we are going to witness more vicious war, and it will be all over the place, and the country will collapse into warlordism, and it may be difficult even to have a central government. The only path to rescue the country is for us to stop this now by going to talk and agree on the best way forward for the country, and that I believe must be not through extension of the government, not through creating a new government by the political parties, which have already failed, and it will fail because of internal conflict within these parties and competition among them. That will be the situation. So the violence on the road to Numili and the violence in eastern Equatoria, even away from the roads, the violence in western Equatoria, as you have seen, for example, the fighting in Tumbra, and the violence now in Upper Nile, the violence in Jungle, the violence in western Bahr Ghazal, the violence in Warab, the violence between Tuj Mayadid and BA. All these are signs of disintegration. All these are signs of the worst that are going to come if we do not come back to our reason and sit to agree on how we can rescue this country and how to build it. How to build a nation out of South Sudanese, how to build a state that is modern and capable of delivering services to the people and delivering development to the people and enabling the people to create wealth and build prosperity. That is really the crossroads we are in, as you said earlier. I thank you for that. These are the two roads. One road is through extension and more war, more crisis, and more economic crisis, more failures, more ministers of finance being dismissed, more governors of central bank being dismissed, and more desertions from the forces to join rebellion, and more fighting among our people. That is one path. Another path is dialogue, national consensus, stabilization of the country, building a peaceful South Sudan, and building a stable, peaceful democracy in South Sudan, and a better system to manage the resources of South Sudan in the interest of the people. So you will have a prosperous South Sudan on this path. The two are not going to meet. The choice is for us. Do you want us to go to the road of extension and more wars and more suffering of the people? and collapse of the state, and then we will be in the dark tunnel at the end. Or we go to the path of dialogue, national consensus, building of a strong state capable to serve the people, and building a stable democracy and building prosperity in which our people live in peace and harmony and celebrating their diversity as 65 different ethnic groups. But they enjoy the Commonwealth, South Sudan, which is their patrimony. Thank you.
Thank you so much, General Pagan. It's true indeed that we have those two roads. One is leading us to hell, and another one is taking us to heaven. And there must be choice. Citizen must to make. Otherwise, even God Himself was not stupid to give us two alternatives. If you misbehave and commit atrocities to your fellow human being, then you go straight to hell. And if you do great things and support people to live in happiness, then God will send you to heaven. All these things exist in our mind, and we know them adequately. So South Sudan is at that crossroad. One is leading us to hell, and one is leading us to heaven. Thank you so much. We have consumed a lot of your time, General, and we know you are busy, and that's why many people are calling you. We are almost coming to an end within the next 10 minutes or 5 minutes. And before we run up our interview, we need you to give us the way forward. After all this said and done, what should be the way forward now for South Sudanese, for the government of national unity, and for you too, as opposition groups that are yet to join the Juba regime? And while you will be answering that question,
I am sorry, I got interrupted by calls. I did not hear the last part of the comment. I heard you that we have two ways, and
thank you.
We are concluding.
Yeah, actually, I was saying we have consumed much of your time.
I heard
and
that.
we will be having more discussion, because South Sudanese now need more information than they need more guns, because information is power, and once citizens are equipped with information, they will be in a position to make right decision. We will end our interview shortly within the next 5 to 6 minutes or 10 minutes. And our last question is, what will be the way forward after we have seen what is happening at the past and where we are, and we are even seeing what is about to happen in the future? Then what will be the way forward for the citizen of South Sudan, for the government of national unity, and also to you as opposition group outside South Sudan? And as you will be answering that question, out of curiosity, I'll be happy to hear from you at least 4 agendas that if you become a president of South Sudan today, as Pagan Amuom Okech, leading South Sudan as the country, what are the most 4 items that you can address? Thank you so much, General.
Thank you very much for this interview. And I would like to conclude by saying that this is a time for us to choose. As you mentioned, God has given us the most important power, and that is the power of choosing the path. And this moment is a moment for us to choose between the 2 paths that we have in front of us. And I know all South Sudanese will choose the path to peace, to prosperity, to unity, and a path of building South Sudan as a harmonious society. We have to exercise this choice. We have to make this choice now before it is too late. And if we make this choice, we'll go on the path that begins with dialogue, that begins with discussions on the best way to build a peaceful, free, and just South Sudan. That is really my message, that this is a moment of choice for all South Sudanese. Our country is disintegrating. Extension of the transitional government is choosing the path that leads to hell here on earth for South Sudanese. It will be hell on earth because it will be more violence, it will be more destruction, it will be more collapse, more economic crisis and suffering of the people. That is not a path that we can choose. We cannot continue choosing the path of failure, choosing system, extending system that have failed, that we have tried again and again. We must agree to open a new way for our country. I am confident that South Sudan will emerge united as a people. South Sudan will emerge as a country united with all its territorial integrity maintained. South Sudan will emerge as a peaceful country in which all South Sudanese will live in peace and dignity as equal citizens without any discrimination among themselves or against any one of them. I believe in South Sudanese because that is the dream we have. That is a dream many generations of South Sudanese have been dreaming of. And now we, the present South Sudanese generations alive today, in an independent South Sudan, we have to make the dream of our ancestors and all the past generations to come true, to build a South Sudan that they will be proud of, to build a South Sudan that the future generations will be proud to be South Sudanese, because the generations of independence have chosen the path of state and nation building in the most peaceful way that creates wealth, that improves the lives of the people. That is my belief, and that is our task as a generation. After independence, historical task is to build a strong modern state and build a nation out of the 64 ethnic groups in South Sudan, celebrating their diversity, but united on justice and equality. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gerald Pagan, Amuom Okech. I asked you my last question before. If you become president of the Republic of South Sudan today, what are the most 4 items that you desire so much to address? Thank you.
There is no way for me to become the president of South Sudan today. The task for every South Sudanese now is not to campaign for any election, is not to campaign for votes. I'm not here to present my electoral program and promises and the things that I will do if I'm elected, because there is no South Sudan. Let us first rescue South Sudan. Let us first sit, unite, and build a system that will give power back to the people and elect their leaders in free and fair and peaceful elections. At that time, we will have the opportunity. Any South Sudanese who believe he wants or she wants to serve the people of South Sudan in the highest office, they will present their programs. Now my program is to join my hand with you, rescue the country, and give that power to professional South Sudanese to rebuild the state, design the system that will be peaceful. And with that, when we have our permanent constitution and stability, then you or me or anybody else who wants to contest will then be given the opportunity to talk about their programs and the things they want to promise the people. If you can delay that, come and ask me when the country is stable and elections begin in a peaceful situation. I'm sure your station will be bigger and wider. Please reserve the 4 questions to that time, and do not forget, I may need it very much that time when I campaign for votes, if at all I am going to contest elections. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gerald Pagan Amuom, Okech. On behalf of Lagos State Media crew, we are really honored and privileged to host you today. And we are so much happy that you have honored our invitation to come and share your thoughts and your perspective about our nation. What you have seen before we gained independence and what transpired during our independence and what we are in now and what the future holds for the people of South Sudan. Up to this juncture, I can wish you well and be safe and healthy, and let's continue talking, because South Sudanese citizens need more information from our liberators, such as you and other more colleagues of yours who are outside South Sudan and who are within the government. Our only challenge is how to get them to the vote. I will give chance to our president to give his last remark, and appreciate you too before we end our interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Secretary General Majok Makur and General Pagan Amuom. We're really honored to have you in Lagos State Media today, tonight, wherever our viewers are tuning in. We have hundreds of people viewing this in different platforms. We have 2 questions from the clubhouse that we would like you to answer those questions, and then you will be given your final remarks to close. Some few questions we were in the commentary section here, you have already elaborated on it, so I will not bring them up again. So I will go straight to Clubhouse, where Abraham Madid is there, and we'll start with Abiel. You can open your mic to ask your question and be brief.
Thank you, Brother Isaac, the Lagos State Media. I want to thank General Pagan Amuom, the SG of the R-SPLM. It is an honor to be heard in this platform. There are 2 questions from those who have read, but first I will ask my question. My question is, you were the members of R-SPLM that first took the Red Army to Cuba, and I'm one of the Red Army as well. I never went to Cuba. Can you talk briefly, if you have a chance, because the role of the Red Army and why they were taken to Cuba, and what was the objective of the SPLM, SPLA by then? The second question is, earlier, beginning of the crisis, you suggested that the South Sudan should be handed to the UN trusteeship. Do you still hold that position, or do you regret making that suggestion? Thank you.
Thank you, Abiel. I got.
And I read one of the questions, Isaac.
Pardon?
The other question is from Jeddah at the clubhouse.
Okay.
My question to General Pagan Amuom is he going to be one of the technocrat team who can rescue South Sudan from what on now? If not, what position would he want to hold?
All right, thank you. Wal Moranyar.
Yes, thank you so much, Isaac. Greetings to Lagos State media viewers and audience in the clubhouse. And greeting to you, Commander Pagan Amuom. Thank you so much for finding time always to come into social media and interact with us. As somebody that had been in the social media, I have noticed, I have observed your presence in social media with us is already making a positive impact. You are nationalizing our views now as opposed to be when our views used to be in the beginning of the conflict. So thanks for that. And thank you so much too for not just ignoring the social media. And thank you so much for not considering us as criminals, but real South Sudanese people. You want to hear their voices. My question to you, Comrade Pagan, is this. On January 21, 2015, you, leaders of the SPLM, went to Tanzania and you came up with SPLM intra-dialogue, or also known as SPLM Communique. In that, you folks were supposed to work on the reunification of the SPLM. Many of us believe that as a good move because the conflict that is affecting our country now is started from within the SPLM. So if the leaders who started the conflict in our country get together, give us a peace of mind and give us a glimpse of hope that our country will be on the right track. Unfortunately, you walked away from Arusha Declaration. You came to diaspora and you kind of hang in there with the FDs, and then from there you left and you came now and formed the real SPLM. And now you came up with a brilliant idea, the round table talk. I really like it. Lakin, Comrade Pagan, I'm still a little bit being a doubting Thomas about that. And the reason why I'm being so doubtful is that the Arusha agreement was also a round table. Why did you walk away from that? And why do you think I should trust you now that what you are saying, you will stick with it? Are you just not playing with our minds again? Then we will believe you and we will put our support behind you and say, yay, round table is a good idea. And then later on, will you not walk away in the same way you walked away from the Arusha agreement? That is my question for you. Give me a confidence that the round table indeed is a good idea and you will not betray us again in the same way you walked away from the Arusha Declaration. That is my question and that is my request to explain to us so that I will not be doubting Thomas again when it comes to roundtable. Thank you. Thanks, Lagos State Media. Thanks, the moderators, for giving me this chance. And you can move me down now, and I will listen to the answer in the audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wal Moranyar. I think, Abraham Adid, do you have anything to add in, or we are allowed General Pagan to answer?
That's it, yeah.
All right, then thank you so much. General Pagan, the floor is yours.
Sorry, I'm receiving a lot of calls, so we are experiencing these interruptions. Thank you very much. The two questions by Abiel, who was part of the youth whom were taken to Cuba, and what was their role from the view of SPLM leaders. The purpose of sending our young men and women who were part of our Red Army and the youth was to educate them and build them as cadres and capable leaders to build a country after the liberation. That was the purpose. And indeed, many of you became professionals. You became medical doctors, and there were 14 or 15 of them who returned back to the country from Canada through programs that were meant to go and support the development of health system. Many of the young people who went to Cuba also were trained in agriculture, in veterinary, in economics, and in many other fields, including also as officers in various specializations of the army and defense. And many have returned, but the majority have remained outside the country because we went on the path that actually the vision of SPLM was betrayed and not implemented, and it became not the guiding vision to implement the programs where all these cadres will return. Not only them alone, but also other young people who resettled in other countries like United States of America, Canada, Australia, and different places where they've gone to their acquired education would have also returned. If you remember, Dr. John was talking about this when we signed the peace agreement, and actually had entered into agreements with various governments, including the Cuban government, to facilitate the return of all these cadres, many of whom have graduated and many of whom have even done their postgraduate education, to come back to build the country. These were the purpose for all that plans. And for the question about well-being in social media, I thank you for that comment. I am in social media because it is an important platform to discuss the problem of the country and how we deal with the failures that we are having in the project of state and nation building. And these are the issues that we are discussing even now. There was a question about the trusteeship that I proposed and whether I regret having made that, and now I'm proposing a roundtable conference with a government of technocrats. First, in 2014, 2015, when I put forward the proposal of the need to put South Sudan under UN trusteeship, in which we will have a government formed by South Sudanese and assisted by the international community, particularly the UN and AU. The call came precisely, and I was in Addis Ababa, having studied and seen the behavior, two parties to the war at that time, the SPLM-IG and the SPLM-IO. And they were refusing to reach agreement on the minimum program to stop the war, and we go back to build the country. And they were ready to continue with the war. Their refusal to continue with the war, I could see very clearly that this country is collapsing into chaos and disorder, and the young state would disintegrate. You know how tribalism has been resurfaced, and how even the armies were being mobilized along tribal lines, and how people were killing themselves as if they were not South Sudanese, as if they were not together to liberate this country. And the idea of trusteeship came at that time because I could not see any other way out for the country to stop these wars or the path of continuing in these wars and failures. A trusteeship will give us an opportunity to stabilize the country, pacify it, build institutions, and in 2 years or 2.5 years, hold peaceful and fair elections, and then the elected government will now take the country on the path of peaceful development and also peaceful system of government in which people elect their government periodically. And this idea is inspired by the last independent country before us, East Timor. What happened? Just like in our case, in East Timor, the Indonesian who were occupying East Timor and actually annexed East Timor as part of Indonesia, instigated war, and they immediately, after the declaration of independence, immediately they entered into a very destructive civil war. The countries of the region of East Timor, that is Australia, Indonesia, Philippines, others, New Zealand, and others, came together and had discussion, and they discussed with the liberation movement itself and those who were fighting them to discuss terms of peace to stop the war. And it ended with agreeing to a 2 years trusteeship for East Timor. And after the 2 years, they go for election and they elect the government, their government. And indeed, that is what happened. Immediately that ended the war, and East Timor was helped by the international community to stabilize and to build the institutions of the state. They helped them with their first elections. And East Timor became a sovereign country in 2 years, again, with an elected government that stabilized the country up to today. Actually, the foreign minister and the finance minister of East Timor used to come to South Sudan for South Sudanese to learn from their experience. That is, when a country emerging as an independent country gets into problems like this, you seek the support of the rest of humanity. We are a member of United Nations. And we can ask them to help us stabilize the country, to help us build the country. In actual fact, we signed a very big and important agreement with the United Nations, with the present mission that is in South Sudan, which is UNAMIS. And part of their mandate is to help us build a state, a peaceful state. And as we took the country to war, one of the very strange things that is happening today is that the UN is providing protection to civilians, hundreds of thousands of South Sudanese civilians being protected from their government or from those in the opposition to be alive by United Nations in our sovereign state. Our citizens are being protected by UN. And now we are speaking, as we speak now, the UN, and it is very unfortunate that even it is not the government of South Sudan, the UN is leading the process of rescuing the lives of 7 million South Sudanese. This is majority of South Sudanese to remain alive, and they are making appeals. It is not the government of South Sudan doing that because it is a failed state. So while I have abandoned the idea of trusteeship because it could not get supported, and because it could not get supported, we lost hundreds of thousands of South Sudanese being killed. The country is totally destroyed. Now today, we have more wars. They are calling them subnational violence. And the country is not stable. Today we are discussing how to prevent the collapse of South Sudanese state. I do not regret having proposed it. It was not accepted. Many people said that how can we give up our independence and to be put under trusteeship? This is unbecoming, and they accuse me of not being patriotic or nationalist enough. Others even has gone to the extent of accusing me that I want to sell the country. If you look to what I said, what I proposed, and why, because I've also explained it before. If you look to the experience of East Timor today, they are doing much, much better than South Sudan. They are in peace. They have held elections. They have 2 former presidents. They have a new president who was a prime minister, now back as a president. And in their last elections, which happened just a few months ago, and they are stable. They are a product of the proposal of a trusteeship as an independent state. If you take the example of Cambodia, which was destroyed by those of Pol Pot and Khmer Rouge, they had to agree when they had their peace negotiations that actually the country had been put under a trusteeship. It was an independent country for a very long time. But because of the level of destruction that they've gone to, and to avoid more bloodshed, they were put under trusteeship. The trusteeship ended in very few years, 2 years, and they held their elections. They were helped by the international community to stabilize their country, and now they are a thriving, actually, society and a thriving economy. They are doing very well today. And they are peaceful. That is what United Nations support could be successful. These are two examples that I had in mind then to rescue our country. We would have not been in this situation now. Maybe we would have held our elections in 2017 and would have been stable from that time. Imagine all those lives lost. Imagine all the opportunities that we have lost in the name of maintaining our independence. Now, there was another question asked whether I am going to be, whether I am a professional technocrat, and whether I will be part of the government of technocrats. I think you join us in the middle of the discussion and you did not hear the explanation I was making. I cannot be a technocrat. I am a politician and I'm a leader of a political party. And what we are saying is that all the leaders of the political parties, whether they are in the government or in the opposition, must agree to step aside. One, that is me, Pagan Amuom, instead of working to join President Kiir government or being invited by President Kiir in his to join his extended government, I'm saying this is a road to disaster. It is a road to hell, as Majok Makur was saying before. The government formed by the parties to the conflict, formed by the political parties, has failed in 5 different transitional governments and continue to fail up to today and will continue to fail until we are in hell. Unless we make a break, hand the government to professional South Sudanese. What is a technocrat? This is a South Sudanese, woman or man, who has expertise in a particular field and has experience in that field in terms of knowledge, but also in terms of practice and experience. Somebody who is working in his field as a profession. somebody who is not a politician, who is not seeking an elected position, whether of a president or a governor or a member of parliament. That is a politician. I have to join them immediately now. So that is a technocrat and that is a politician. These are two different things. I do not qualify to be a technocrat. And the proposal of forming a government of technocrats is based on the idea that we, those who are opposed to the government, we should not join the transitional government. And those who are now in the government made by the parties to the conflict, who signed the agreement, should also agree not to join the transitional government if we are to rescue the country, if we are to achieve peace in our country, if we are to build a better system in which our people can elect their leaders peacefully. A system that will make the politicians not be at each other's throat because they want to keep power, so they kill those who are in the opposition, or they want to take the power from those who are in the government, so you are in the opposition, you want to overthrow and destroy those who are in power. That is the easiest way to stop it. I think it is logical. So there is no way that I can come around and say, President Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar, you leave power and give it to us so that we take it. This cannot be. There was a question of the SPLM by Wal Moranyar. The question that I walked away from the Arusha agreement. In actual fact, I walked away because Chairman Kiir, chairman of the SPLM, decided to kill the Arusha agreement, decided not to work for the unity of SPLM. That is why I walked away. You remember, on the basis of the Arusha agreement, even before we signed the peace agreement, I was asked by the FDs to return to Juba, and also by the government of Kenya and the ANC party in South Africa and the Chama Mapinduzi party in Tanzania, plus of course the NRM government in Uganda, for us to return to Juba, even though there was no peace, to begin the unification of the SPLM. I went to Juba. I took oath again as the Secretary General of SPLM to implement the Arusha Agreement and to lead that process. And I made a declaration that from now onward, let us work to unite the SPLM and leave our factional groupings and return the SPLM back to its vision, because that is the Arusha Agreement. Unfortunately, President Kiir was not enthusiastic about implementing the Arusha Agreement, about returning to the vision of SPLM. And I told him, Comrade Chairman, we need to unite the SPLM, and the best environment for us to unite the SPLM and unite the people of South Sudan is to end the war. Let us stop this war. Let us go to Addis Ababa, sign the peace agreement, and then you form the government with the parties, and I will be focusing on reuniting the SPLM and reviving the SPLM. The chairman was heavily under the JCE at that time, and almost the JCE became like the political bureau of the SPLM. They were the one presenting proposals, policies, like, for example, when they made the proposal in the meeting of SPLM National Liberation Council, which was held in J1. The JCE was given the opportunity to present a proposal how to divide South Sudan into 24, 28 states. And I immediately went to, after the meeting, I went to the president. I said, I would like to meet with you, please. He said, okay. So when I said, first, if we have proposals for governance or policies to be implemented in the government, if it is an SPLM government, please consult the SPLM structures, the political bureau, and you have the National Liberation Council, and you have the National Secretariat of the party. These are the channels. I understand the way things were being done before, but we are now implementing this. Revive the political bureau, please. That is what brought the disagreement, and that is what made me walk away, because the president, in his capacity as the chairman of the SPLM, was not interested in implementing the Arusha agreement. And to prove this, even when I said, okay, you, the rest of the FDs, you believe that you can now go and implement the Arusha agreement, please go. I don't think President Kiir is interested in that. He's actually more interested to destroy the SPLM and destroy the image of the SPLM as he rules. That is how I left Juba and did not return. And I made a statement, I will only return to South Sudan when it is peaceful. I will never join any government that is engaged in destroying South Sudan and waging war on the people of South Sudan. I will never join any government that is engaged in wars in South Sudan. And this position is arising from the very principles and the vision that I believed in and that guided us in the SPLM, and for which many of my comrades gave their lives. That is my commitment. And that is why today you find me trying to revive the vision of SPLM, the real vision of SPLM, through this vehicle that we call Real SPLM. Now you can understand what do we mean by Real SPLM? What do we mean by the real vision of SPLM? You said that I give you the confidence and so that you can support the idea of round table. First, let us separate the two. I would like to assure you, if you are genuinely a member of SPLM, I'm sure you are assured by what I just said. And you understand why I made the proposal that I made that time. And you understand why I'm making this proposal now. And I'm saying our country is at the crossroads. And if we do not rescue it now, it will be too late tomorrow. If we take the path of extension of this failed government, come and ask me about the idea of round table after a few years. Maybe in 2025, if I'm here by that time and you are here. That is my commitment. I am an open book. I show you my commitment, what I'm ready to do for this country, and what I'm not ready to do. And at every stage, I also make my view very clear. Go back to 2015, go back to 1983, come forward to 1991, come to 2005, come to 2010, when we were campaigning for the referendum, come to 2011 when we were declaring the independence, come to 2012 when we were negotiating for the relations between the independent South Sudan and the rest of Sudan that we have separated from. Come to now, come to this very moment, you will find Pagan Amuom not deviating, not betraying anybody, not leaving anybody, because I am deep rooted in the vision of this country as articulated by our founding father, John Garang de Mabur, of whom some people insult me and us to refer to us as an insult that we are the orphans of John Garang, boys of John Garang. But they don't know that this is not an insult. I was a matured man already in the bushes of South Sudan, struggling for South Sudan when I met John Garang the first time. I was in the bushes of South Sudan. I did not follow him. When this war started, but I follow his vision, even though he's not with us here. And I'm committed to that vision, to that dream that he had, to that dream for which many, as I said earlier, of my comrades, I buried them myself. And that is my commitment. I do not walk away from that. Kiir can walk away to join the NCP and implement policies which are not SPLM. He has done that. That is walking away from the vision. That is walking away from the program. If you remain with Kiir, then you are the one who walked away. I'm not. Thank you. And I think we should end here because I have to go for another appointment.
Thank you so much, Gerald Pagan Amuom, for your time and for answering questions both on Facebook here and also from our participants in Clubhouse. Thank you so much. We will end our interview here because we have taken much of your time. Let me give you 1 minute to send your last parting shot, then we close the interview.
Nothing better than what I have just said, that I'm committed to the vision of a free, peaceful, and a prosperous South Sudan. And I call on all South Sudanese to please let us put our hands together. Let us put aside our differences, political differences, or tribal differences, and join hands as South Sudanese. All let us come together, rescue our country, and take it on the path to build it as a free, peaceful, and prosperous, just, new South Sudan for all South Sudanese, a country that we live in, united in peace and harmony, singing songs of freedom with joy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gerald Pagan Amuom Okech. To South Sudanese who are watching us live on Facebook, thank you so much for being there for almost 3 hours. And to my fellow comrades on Clubhouse, thank you so much too for being there and asking questions to our guests. To Lagos State Media crew, thank you so much behind the screen and behind the curtains for monitoring the event. Up to this juncture, we end our interview, and may God bless each and every South Sudanese, and let's hope for the best. There is best in every hope, and let's keep talking. Community that talk, find solution for their problems. May God be with you, Gerald Pagan. May God be with each and everyone. Thank you so much.
Also with you and everyone.
It's your boy Young Love, I give him that time. Pancho leg stand and punchy America. Banyi doll, Pancho leg stand and punchy America. Banyi doll, ban walk on your leg, Kankara water no watching. Oga level leg, gear, pow, very leg. Panda with ya, punchy America. Banya doll, no, chingatongo pandon, could you ever buy a check out? Papu panda gear, what ya be doll venting. Stand up punchy America, Banyi doll, Pancho leg stand up punchy America, Banyi doll, Ban walk on your leg, Kankara water no watching, Oga level leg, gear, pow, very leg, Panda with ya, punchy America, Panya doll, Chingatongo pandon, could you ever buy a check out? Papu panda gear, what ya be, doll venting.